All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
I took my troubles down to Madame Rue. You know that gypsy with the gold cap too. She's got a pad down a petticoat and vine, selling little bottles of love potion number 9. I told her that I was a flop with chicks. I've been this way since 1956. She looked at my palm and she made a magic sign. She said what you need is love potion number 9. She bent down and turned around and gave me a wink. She said I'm gonna make it up right here in the sink. It smelled like turpentine and looked like Indian ink. I held my nose, I closed my eyes, I took a drink.
And welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, coming to you from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. X Zone Nation, my guest this hour is Paul Quinn. And Paul is a writer, teacher, intuitive consultant, and author of Tarot for Life, Reading the Cards for Everyday Guidance and Growth. Listed as a top talent in Tarot by Chicago Magazine, Paul conducts tarot consultations and classes using tarot as a tool to help people gain insights leading to positive changes and greater well-being. He lives in Chicago, and his websites are, now there's two websites, X Zone Nation, and of course they'll be on our archives page, www.spiritedlife.com and www.tarotforlife.net. Paul Quinn, welcome to the X Zone.
Thanks, Rob. Pleasure to be here.
Paul, where did your interest in tarot come from?
Well, I think that I've always been inclined toward the mystical and the mysterious ever since I was a young kid. And I had my first tarot reading over, I'd say that was maybe 12 years ago now. Mm-hmm. And oddly enough, the reading itself wasn't that impressive. It didn't really speak to me, but the cards did. And that was the first time I had seen the cards. And just intuitively, I got the sense that there was perhaps something else to be learned here, something deeper, that even though that reading, didn't impress me, that the cards might have had a deeper story to tell, and that's what started the journey.
Paul, there are so many different types of tarot cards on the market today. Does it really matter which deck you use, or is it a matter of personal preference?
It's a matter of personal preference, and there are hundreds, if not there might even be over 1,000 decks available right now in the commercial market. And it doesn't matter. There's a deck for every taste and style. Mm-hmm. But my own preference is for decks that at least feature both genders, because there are some decks that don't. And I think that a deck that features males and females is probably a more accurate representation of, both literally and energetically, the planet that we're on. But that's just a personal preference. And there are some decks that are very abstract. There's the Thoth deck by Aleister Crowley, which is beautiful cubist design and very abstract. There are human beings, but they're very stylized. And then there's literally novelty decks like the Hello Kitty Tarot, which uses adorable little cat pictures to tell the tarot story. So there's again a huge gamut, which makes it really fun for collectors.
Now, the tarot deck itself, is it just a tool for you to use into the divination that you use, or do the cards actually have specific meanings?
Well, the cards do have specific meanings, Rob, and of course the meanings can... The cards are great surfaces for projection. In other words, we can look at any one card, and if you have 10 people in a room, those 10 people might have a very different idea of what that card represents. But what's interesting is that all those impressions are quote-unquote true to the degree that they reflect a genuine reality for that person. So when it comes to like assigning a meaning to a card, yes, there are generally recognized meanings for every card. But within those meanings, there are an endless number and variety of personal associations that a person can make that go beyond what a book might say, for instance, about the meaning of a card.
Paul, stand by. You and I have to take a commercial break. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Exo Nation, Paul Quinn is our special guest. He is the author of Tarot for Life, reading the cards for everyday guidance and growth. His website is www.tarotforlife.net. Paul Quinn and I return on the other side of this break as the X Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the X Zone Broadcast Network and the Talkstar Radio Network. Once again, if you'd like to send an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, on MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com, and our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com and www.xzonetv.com. I'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away. And welcome back, everyone. Paul Quinn is my special guest. His website is www.tarotforlife.net. Paul, why do people get tarot card readings?
I think people get readings for many different reasons. Some people are just curious, and they are willing to find out what life or synchronicity has to show them in terms of a random kind of reading. And then there are, of course, the majority of people who come with a very specific kind of question on their minds, and that might have to do with relationships, either at work or at home. It might have to do with a personal project they're working on, perhaps a feeling of not knowing where to turn in life, and so on. There's really no average kind of question, and particularly today with the economy as bad as it is, many people are wanting to get insights into things like employment and money, which is interesting because I've read reports, Rob, that this has been a very good time for psychics and fortune tellers because a number of people are out of work and are hoping for a glimpse of hope. And that actually is kind of a sharp break-off point for me because I don't tend to look at the future. I don't use the cards for prediction because I don't find that terribly reliable, and I also think that there are problems associated with anticipating futures that may not be empowering for a person, particularly if it's a kind of prediction that has them set to the worry part of the dial. But anyway, yeah, there's just all kinds of reasons that people would choose to have a reading. And like I say, the bottom line is curiosity.
How does tarot work? You know, I've watched tarot card readers lay down do their spread and turn over cards, and it seems that no two tarot card readers read cards the same way.
Yeah.
How does tarot work?
There is no formulaic way to do it. And it's just a personal preference. It's very much free form. And I teach the tarot. And if I have 10 people in a class, chances are that they're all doing a different way in terms of how they lay out the cards and turn them over and whatever they do beforehand to sort of prepare. But the general thing that happens in a reading is that a deck of 78 cards is turned upside down so the images can't be seen. And either the reader or the client is going to be shuffling the cards, and then with that shuffle, there's always an intention. And the intention is around the question. In other words, for example, what do I need to pay attention to at this time to make my marriage work more effectively? So then as that person is moving the cards around and they turn the cards over, through the principle of synchronicity, which has at its root timing, certain cards tend to show up related to that question. And that is the mystery and fun of the tarot, is that while we know that the reason the cards turn up as they do is because of synchronicity, we have no real idea what is orchestrating synchronicity. Much the same as if we're thinking about a lost love from decades ago, and then we bump into them moments later at the drugstore. What is it that has created the thought of that person, and then moments later actually running into them? We sense there's some design in it. There's something intentional about it, even though it's out of our conscious control or understanding.
I don't think there's a person listening today or this evening who hasn't had that experience, Paul. So it's something that they can relate to. How can?
And I think that I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, sir.
No, I was just going to say I think that the joy of those experiences, and some of them can be very funny, very quirky, and some can be very profound, is that it reconnects us to a sense of wonder and a sense of magic in the world. Mm-hmm. That these sorts of extraordinary coincidences, and I'm putting coincidences in quotation marks, can occur. And it makes life fun. And it gives us that sense of kind of looking around with fresh eyes and thinking, well, maybe things are deeper or more mysterious than they appear in the normal part of my life. And that's the fun of it, is that it reconnects us to mystery and wonder. And I personally find those very nourishing kinds of feelings or awarenesses.
Paul, can the tarot cards help people facing a career or financial crisis?
Well, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, yes, they can, in that they can help us with choices. Many times the cards can be very effective if we have options. For instance, if someone wants to know, should I go into pottery or mechanics or start a beauty salon? There's very different kinds of options. But what we might do in a reading is turn over a card for each of those options and then look at the cards that come up. And chances are that one of the cards is going to have a higher charge to it or a more positive thumbs up kind of go for it message than the other ones. Or perhaps two of the cards say that these are both viable options. So it's great when it comes to helping with decision making in an intuitive way. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of people really want to cut to the chase, Rob, and they just want to know, am I going to get this job I'm interviewing for? Very tempting question. The problem is, if the card says no, you've got now a person who's already got an interview set up, who's feeling dispirited and demoralized before they even go into it because a tarot card said they weren't going to get the job. And I think that's very, very damaging and counterproductive. On the same account, if a card says, "Oh yes, you've got this job in the bag. When you go in, you're going to get it. There are no other candidates," that can give the person a false sense of confidence and security, and kind of set their psychic snooze button. So I think our real power is in the moment. It's in the present, whatever issue we're facing, and just to rely on our inner strength and our own convictions, rather than be told by anybody what our future is going to show.
So how would you handle a question like that? If I was sitting in front of you and I said, Paul, I've got an interview later on with a new network. Am I going to get the job or not? How would you handle that?
Well, what I would do, and I've been asked questions like that, Rob, is I would say instead, I would ask if we could reframe the question and say, what energies will help you to really do your best in that interview? And so then we pull cards with the question, what energies or qualities will help Rob get this make this interview terrific? And then that's something within your power, because maybe a card says, watch for overconfidence, or make sure that you don't come across too intellectual. This is a more action-oriented group. We would look to see what you personally can bring to the situation. But a clear yes or no, will you, won't you get the job? Again, I think that robs us of our personal ability to affect our own destinies.
Plus, I believe, Paul...
And by the way, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I believe, Paul, that there are so many unknown factors that can happen from the time the question is asked until the time of the interview that we may not be aware of, that it would be totally impossible and illogical to give a definitive yes or no.
Exactly. And by the way, this is not to discount that the tarot can be an effective tool for prediction, because I've personally seen that in readings that I have done for myself and also that I have had done for me in the past, where, the outcome that was shown on the card is indeed what came to pass. But so it's not to say that's not effective, but I think that psychologically or emotionally, I just don't find it the healthiest thing to do, because we have free choice.
Right.
And we don't, what if the card was wrong? There's always the unreliability factor in any kind of projection, in any sort of prediction. And if it's wrong, then you've just robbed yourself of the confidence or hope that might normally have been yours in moving forward toward that option. And that's a spiritual thing. I think our spirit really wants to explore and do and try. And if things don't turn out as we'd hoped, that's called a learning experience. But we cannot micromanage everything related to tomorrow. Sometimes we just have to step into it. A reading can help us prepare. Like I say, we can find out what energies will help me in the interview, because that is empowering. Not, sorry, buddy, this job is going to somebody else.
Can a tarot card reading be as a general reading? For example, I've been to many psychic fairs doing this show over the years, and I've seen people sit down in front of psychics and they'd say, well, what would you like to know? And the person would say, just give me a general reading. Yeah. Does tarot have that ability as well?
Yeah, but what I've found, there are many people that want general readings, and sometimes a general reading can surface issues, themes in the person's life that they had not even been thinking about. And just as often, a more general reading will reflect the person's own, the lack of any urgency in the absence of an issue that's really bringing them to that reading. I find that when people come with a genuine need or sincere desire or interest to understand something about themselves or a relationship or a situation better, that the cards really talk. We get a lot of very in-depth information, insights, and it's a rich experience. People come for a general reading, sometimes it's sort of blah, in my experience. Sometimes we get, accurate, interesting, but rarely penetrating, rarely things that are transforming in nature. And that's just, I think, in response to the nature of the open reading general question. You ask general stuff, you kind of get general response.
Paul, please stand by. You and I have to take our break. We'll be back after the news. Paul Quinn is my special guest, X-Zone Nation. His website is www.tarotforlife.net. The name of his book is Tarot for Life, Reading the Cards for Everyday Guidance and Growth. The X-Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, will return on the other side of this news break as Paul Quinn and I further investigate and discuss Tarot for Life here on the X-Zone. Don't go away.
The magic and the free your soul, but it's like trying to tell a stranger about a rock and roll. Believe in magic.
My name is Michael Telstar, Canada's leading mentalist from Toronto, Ontario.
Hi, my name is Splenda, and you're listening to my dad, Rob McConnell, on the X-Zone.
This is Psychic Dorothy from St. Catharines, and you're listening to Rob McConnell. Hello, my name is Holly Reeves, an astrologer from Astro For You, and you're listening to Canada's #1 paranormal radio show, The X Zone, with Rob McConnell.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
This magic moment, so different and so new, was like any other, until I kissed you, and then it happened. It took me by surprise, I knew that you felt it too, by the look in your sweeter than a wine, softer than a summer night. Everything I want, I'll have whenever I hold you tight. This magic moment, while your lips are close to mine, will last forever, forever till the end of time.
And welcome back. Paul Quinn is my special guest. He is the author of Tarot for Life, Reading the Cards for Everyday Guidance and Growth. His website is www.tarotforlife.net. That's tarotforlife.net. So tell me, just to recap, Paul, can the tarot cards predict the future?
Yes, they can. I have experienced it myself that they can be accurate, and I've also experienced that they are not accurate with predicting the future. So one really has to take that future with a grain of salt and focus instead on the now, on the present moment, which I believe is where our power, our real power, really exists. There's a story in my book that I tell about the kind of ambiguity of the future. There's one card that is called the Six of Pentacles. And the Six of Pentacles in the deck that I use features a merchant who is tossing coins to two paupers in need. And this card came up for a friend of mine who had come for a reading about whether or not she was going to get this grant for school. And it wasn't so much a future-oriented question about whether she will or she won't, but in fact, at the end of this spread called the Celtic Cross, there is a card called Possible Outcome. Well, that was her possible outcome. And we both thought, well, that's got to be her receiving the grant, the merchant, person in power, giving money to the paupers. And she left feeling pretty good, as did I. Hey, that would make sense. Here's someone who's asking for a grant. Well, what turned out, Rob, was that a few weeks later, money was indeed forked over, but it was Mary Beth who was forking it over. Her mother took ill, and Mary Beth had to leave school in order to take care of her mother. So what really happened was that she was the one in the card who was giving the money. She was the benefactor. She was the one that the card was indicating was the one standing giving the money, not the one receiving it. And that's sort of the ambiguity of this whole thing. There's also a great story of ancient times about King Croesus, who went to the great oracle at Delphi. And the oracle told him that if he launched a war, I believe against Persia, a mighty kingdom would fall. Well, the king assumed that the kingdom falling would be his enemies, but it wasn't. It was his own. So again, there's sort of the, when you look at the future, there's very little certainty involved, even though there are some very accurate clairvoyance. And again, I'm not at all denouncing the ability of for people to see or a card to show a future scenario, but I'm just saying that it's not entirely reliable, and we have to keep that in mind.
Exonation, our special guest, as I said this hour, is Paul Quinn. His website is www.tarotforlife.net. Paul, tarot has kind of a scary reputation. Is there any good reason to actually fear it? Like I've heard horror stories about Ouija boards, but I haven't heard anything that bad pertaining to tarot.
Well, the tarot gets a bad rap, Rob, because I think of with every Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode and Supernatural, the TV show, and others, and movies, where, if you want to have a sinister sort of vibe, you get a tarot reader who is usually giving very bad news to the protagonist about what's in the store for them. James Bond. In fact, there was one of the old James Bond movies where a tarot card reader figured very prominently.
Yeah.
So it's a great plot device when you want to have a little mysterious, mystical element you throw in the tarot cards. And of course, if you really want to juice it up, you make sure that the Death card or the Hangman or the Tower or the Devil card appear. And so is it scary? No. But does it have a scary reputation? I would say yes. And that's true even for a lot of new agey people that I meet who are kind of unsettled to hear that I work with the cards. And it just shows how deeply ingrained a distrust of tarot is.
Paul, are you also psychic? Are you a medium? Are you a channeler as well?
Well, no. I'm none of those things. What I am now comfortable referring to myself as is intuitive. And intuitive is like psychic light, L-I-T-E. I don't see things as a clairvoyant does. I don't get those sorts of very vivid images, nor am I clairaudient. I don't hear things. The intuition, I think, comes in with just the process of working very closely with the cards and with a client, where sometimes I feel led to ask a particular question that is the one that strikes gold in the reading, or just make an observation that comes to me in the moment that I'm as surprised by as the client is. So whatever psychic hits I get in a reading are entirely surprising to me, and it's always like, oh, that's icing on the cake. That's very nice, but I don't count on those sorts of hits. Instead, I interpret the cards, which is a left and right brain process, really. It's a matter of using what I know about the cards intellectually and historically, and then just being there with the person, listening to what's on their heart, and then being able to see or feel in the cards what the message for this person is with this or that card. So in that sense, it is intuitive, but I'm not comfortable describing myself as a psychic, because I do know psychics who are very skilled at being able to tell you that, oh, wow, that you have the King of Cups. That means you have a brother named Dean, and he lives in the Bahamas, and he's in snorkeling equipment. And my level of detail is not that.
You've been teaching tarot since 2000. Can anyone learn how to read the tarot cards?
Yes, they can. And like anything, you first start out clunky. People start off having to go to the book every few minutes to read what the interpretation in the book says. Just like learning an instrument, you can't play jazz until you've learned the basics, and then you can improvise. But everyone can learn. The question is curiosity. I think that the ingredient that makes not only a good tarot reader but a good tarot student is a very core curiosity about who they are and what their potential is and what gifts are they sitting on that they have not yet learned to tap into and share and develop. And this is the real joy of the tarot, is that rather than looking at tomorrow, it really can be used mindfully to mine what and who we are now, and to unearth the spiritual potential within each of us. Because there's something that's rattling all of our cages, Rob. I think that there's something that keeps us awake at night, or there's something that we keep running into the same walls in our lives again and again and again. And a tarot reading, certainly not the only way, but it can be an effective way to kind of find out what's underneath this cage rattling. What is going on unconsciously in my life that if I were conscious of it, I would be free. I would be able to get through the hurdle. So I use it very much as a tool for psychological or spiritual growth.
So when somebody comes to you and they want to learn tarot, how do you teach them?
Well, it's a total immersion. It is. In fact, I'm teaching a class in Chicago for 3 consecutive Saturdays in March, and we do everything. There is a bit of lecture, there's demonstrations, there's role playing, there's games, there's meditation, there's journaling, there's movement. It is a completely integrative approach so that people are starting to absorb the cards mentally, psychologically, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And I find that this sort of immersion technique, everyone's going to be able to learn in a way that they learn best, because not everyone is a book learner, and so there's something for everybody in that approach. And it's fun. It's kind of, I call it a soul classroom, because it's much more than a how-to. Because as we learn about each of these amazing, beautiful 78 cards, we're also learning about ourselves and how each of those cards pertains to a part of us that is expressed or not at any given moment.
Doesn't the Bible condemn forms of divination such as tarot?
Yeah, it sure does, and that's part of the bad rap that it's gotten in our society, from the pulpits. However, the Bible also, it's an amazing and wonderful and complex and contradictory work, and the Bible also fails to condemn, though Daniel, the prophet Daniel, who was the chief of the astrologers, and of course Joseph of the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat fame, who had prophetic dreams. So these and other examples in the Bible are not condemned. They're simply stated as a fact. Another thing that's interesting too, and I have a couple of friends who are conservative Christians, and we do differ on when it comes to the question of the tarot. But even with some conservative Christians, there's a form of divination called bibliomancy, and with bibliomancy, the Bible is used, and the person will ask a question. And then they will randomly page through the Bible, usually with their eyes closed, and then let their fingertip rest on a particular passage wherever it happens to land. And that Bible verse is what they use as the meaning or answer to their question. So there's an example of divination right there. And people, my goodness, in ancient times used all kinds of things. Birds, the collection of birds on trees, the number of birds in a tree. The behavior of certain animals was seen to mean certain things. Even animal entrails. I forget the name of this particular form of divination, but a pig, for example, would be cut open, and its innards, the way the innards spill out on the earth, is what would
that's just like tea leaf reading.
Yeah, it's the same principle. And what they all have in common is randomness. What they all have in common is the fact that the conscious mind, or the ego, is out of the way. And we are courting the universe, we're courting life to say, I'm really sincere in my desire to know, to have insight. So are you willing to play? And that's the whole spirit of doing this sort of work, of doing this sort of thing. But it's totally random.
Tell me, what makes a person a good tarot reader?
Well, I think that number one, you have to like people. That is, if you're going to be doing readings for other people, and many people don't. There are many of my own students have no intention of reading the cards for other people. They use it only as a tool for themselves, almost like a meditation tool. But I think, you have to like people. You also have to be a good listener. And by good listener, I mean you have to be able to suspend judgment. Because I have given readings to many people whose choices, the way they express themselves in their lives, are not what I agree with. In fact, I might even think is harmful. But unless I'm getting something in the reading that is urging them in another direction, it's my job not to judge the behaviors and just to be there with the person. So I think that lack of judgment and good listening is important. And then the last thing is you have to work on yourself in order to help people arrive at their own insights, or to help people look at themselves more truthfully, which is the true scary part of the tarot. It's not demons and devils. It's the willingness to be honest with ourselves. Then I think the reader has to have gone through his or her own process of looking at him or herself honestly, working through what Jung called the shadow, which is the parts of ourselves that we'd rather not own up to, but unless we do, it's going to run our lives. So yeah, I think a little bit of self-therapy, with or without the aid of a therapist, is important in order to be a clear enough channel to be of use to other people.
Paul, please stand by. You and I have to take our final break for this hour. Exonation Paul Quinn is our very special guest. He's the author of Tarot for Life, Reading the Cards for Everyday Guidance and Growth. And Paul's website is www.tarotforlife.net. Paul and I will be back on the other side of this commercial break as the X Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the X Zone Broadcast Network and the Talkstar Radio Network. Once again, for more information on Paul, visit his website at www.tarotforlife.net. That's www.tarotforlife.net. We'll be back after this break. Don't go away.
Magic moments when two hearts are caring. Magic moments, memories we've been sharing. I'll never forget the moment we kissed the night of the hayride. The way that we hugged to try to keep warm while taking a sleigh ride. Magic moments, memories we've been sharing.
Welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. By the way, don't forget we have a 2012 countdown clock available for all the members of the X Zone Nation, compliments of the Los Angeles Times. All you have to do is go to www.xzonepodcast.com. That's www.xzonepodcast.com. And right beneath the clock, you can't miss it, it says Doomsday with a big question mark. Oh, by the way, there are 1,044 days, 8 hours, 3 seconds, and 7 seconds left. Just click underneath where it says Get and Share, and you'll be able to download the codes, and away you go. That's at www.xzonepodcast.com. Paul Quinn is my special guest. He is the author of Tarot for Life, Reading the Cards for Everyday Guidance and Growth. His website, www.tarotforlife.net, and tarot is TAROTFORLIFE.net. That's www.tarotforlife.net. Paul, who is Tarot for Life for?
Tarot for Life is for beginners primarily. I wrote the book because I wanted to write the kind of book that I wish had been available when I was first learning the tarot. Mm-hmm. But to my delight, it is not just for beginners. I'm hearing from a lot of people who've been working with the cards for years who are finding it useful and insightful. And I think the reason is as far as I can tell, it's the first and only book that features a story for each of the 78 cards. So for each card, I'm giving examples of how that card appeared most memorably or insightfully in a reading that I've done for either myself or for clients or that my students have given in class. So in that way, it's both entertaining and instructive with the addition of these stories.
In your opinion, Paul, besides yourself, who was the greatest tarot card reader of all time?
Well, I don't know if they are in the annals of history. I think that history kind of snickers at tarot readers in general. But I don't know. Within the tarot community, there is a wonderful pair of teachers. That's Mary Greer and Rachel Pollack. And both of these women have written numerous books on the tarot and are known for their readings. But I don't think there is a tarot reader that is well known enough, around the world or the country to stand out in general.
Paul, it's been a great pleasure having you with us here in the X Zone. Once again, let our listeners know how they can find out more about you and how they can get a copy of your book, Tarot for Life.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, Rob, you actually cut out for a moment, unfortunately. Did you ask me a question?
Let our listeners know how they can find out more about you and where they can get a copy of your book.
Okay, yes, that would be on my website, which, as you've heard, is www.tarotforlife.net, and you can write to me there.
And there you go. Paul, thank you very much for joining us. Take care of yourself. Look forward to talking to you again in the future. Paul Quinn has been our guest this hour. He is a writer, teacher, intuitive consultant, and author of Tarot for Life, Reading the Cards for Everyday Guidance and Growth. His website, once again, Exonation, www.tarotforlife.net, TAROTFORLIFE.net. When I come back from the news at the top of the hour at 6.5 minutes past, I'll be joined by Mike Joseph as the X Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the X Zone Broadcast Network and the Talkstar Radio Network. Don't go away. We'll be back after the news.